Alright, no more excuses, no more apologies. The honeymoon phase is over. What's the verdict on Sonic Frontiers 1 month later? I still think it's a good game, but obviously it does have some problems. Running around and just exploring is really fun. It's enjoyable grinding rails, homing attacking stuff, and soaring through the air. In general, Sonic is just a blast to control. He's fast, but you have enough control to where he doesn't feel unwieldy like in the Boost games. It is fun being an unstoppable bullet of death, but I love the stability that Frontiers provides. It reminds me a lot of Lost World. Both games have a go fast button on the trigger, both have parkour, and both have a great balance between speed and platforming. My major concern with the way Sonic controls comes from the perspective changes between 2D and 3D. The game locks you into a 2D perspective at certain times, and it really hurts the sense of freedom and open-endedness that this game has. The thing that makes me scratch my head the most is the game has plenty of straightforward linear challenges in 3D, so the need for 2D seems a little odd. I guess platforming is easier when you are in 2D, but given the number of options Sonic has for moving in the air, I never had too much problem platforming even in 3D. Besides this though, I enjoy most of all of the open world. There's small obstacle courses all throughout each of the Starfall Islands which prevents the world from ever feeling empty, which I feel happens a lot with open world games. The maps are big enough to feel like a new frontier to explore, but small enough to not be a hassle to travel through. Besides these obstacle courses, you'll spend the rest of your time tackling challenges at these signposts which reveal more of the map once completed. The challenges are hit or miss. I like the time trial challenges where you have to get to a certain point on the map or go through a bunch of blue gates before the time limit runs out, but honestly, a lot of these challenges are pretty mindless at best and annoying at worst. Doing stuff like these light panel puzzles and the Tetris falling block puzzles just sucks. They're not difficult and they usually don't take too long, they're just drastic gameplay shifts that don't really add much. Remember this problem because this is a reoccurring problem that I'll address later. I also really don't like the nighttime exclusive challenges where you have to side loop these glowing lights. I don't see any reason to have these levels only be available at night. It's not like lights are invisible during the day. If you want to do nighttime exclusive challenges, give us a way to quickly change the time. Like if you side loop the nighttime signs, it automatically skips to nighttime. I remember having to literally stand there and wait until nighttime to start one of these things, and waiting for long periods of time is something that you definitely don't want, especially in a Sonic game. Now, completing the challenges aren't necessary unless you want to go for 100%, but unless you get 100%, you won't have access to fast travel. I feel like having to wait until you 100% the map to unlock fast travel to the portals was pretty unnecessary. Isn't it a little silly to give you fast travel after you've already completely explored the map? At that point, you've probably done just about everything you need to do. Just give us fast travel to each portal once we open it up with the gears. You can get fast travel before this, but only to the Elder and Hermit Coco locations, and you get access to this power by finding scrolls in Big's fishing spots. Originally, I kinda liked the fishing game, but the more I played it, the more tiresome it got. The fishing minigame never really gets challenging at any point, and I guess that's not the point. It's meant to be there to help you relax after the more exciting and tense portions of the game, but if you're like me and you try to 100% the fish catalog, it can get really old really quickly. A little bit more challenge would make it a lot more engaging. I'm not saying this has to be Stardew Valley levels of difficult fishing minigames, but I don't know, maybe have like a harder difficulty or maybe a secret special challenge fishing spot. Now, you can use this minigame to get collectibles to help continue the story and upgrade Sonic. Similar to the nighttime challenges, something I just don't understand why it's a thing is, why can you only upgrade Sonic's speed at the Elder Coco one level at a time? This is a huge waste of time, and it's even more infuriating because you can upgrade your power and defense all at the same time when you go to the Hermit Coco. Why can you upgrade everything at once here, but not when it comes to speed or ring capacity? Why is ring capacity even a thing? You'll never need more than the base 400 rings, and having more rings just makes it harder for Sonic to go into his super speed boost mode thing when he reaches his ring maximum. There are several small changes that would make this game so much better. But when it comes to the bigger changes that could be made, we have to talk about the story missions. Remember how I talked about drastic gameplay shifts? Herding Cocos, pinball, this crane game, the space shooter segments? Why? This has been an issue for the series for over 20 years. Now, I don't think significantly changing up the gameplay is inherently bad. It can provide a fun change of pace. But that's the thing, most of these aren't fun. I could give them a pass if they were side missions or mini games like in Yakuza or GTA, but these are required to progress. And the worst part is that the space shooter gameplay style is used for the final boss of the game. That's the ultimate slap in the face to this legitimately cool gameplay style you guys have made. Have faith in your game. You can make a fun and engaging Sonic game with just Sonic, just fast-paced platforming. I don't need a mini game to show Sonic hacking into the mainframe, just do it in a cutscene. Another big part of the gameplay is the collection of cyberspace levels. These have been very controversial due to the reused level themes and the altered physics that Sonic has, which makes him play differently than in the open world. Though, honestly, I like the cyberspace levels. These are the kinds of changes of pace that I can appreciate. While the levels are more linear than the open-ended islands, the core gameplay is still the same, albeit with some physics changes. And even then, it didn't really bother me much. As for some criticism, obviously we need more level themes for these things. Sonic has 30 years of diverse and unique levels, and they stuck to Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky, Sanctuary, and Nondescript City. Besides some new level themes, I wish the cyberspace levels were harder. There needs to be more levels like the infamous 1-2. That may or may not have taken me over an hour to get an S rank on. The last really significant part of the gameplay is the combat. The combat, it's alright. Most of the mooks scattered about the island pose little threat and aren't particularly interesting to beat, but you can avoid them if you want, and if you do fight them, they're quick to take out, and you can do some really cool looking moves to beat them. The downside to Sonic's moveset is Sonic's skill tree is incredibly short. Maybe I'm being a little bit greedy. Sonic doesn't usually get a ton of new skills in his arsenal, and this game adds quite a few. Sonic having a projectile attack is still wild to me. I think the most engaging fights belong to the mini-bosses, although some of the mini-bosses can take forever to beat. The actual bosses are really hype, especially the edgy rock music that comes along with them. I do like the music for this game. The cyberspace music is pretty catchy, albeit a bit repetitive. Very few of the open world tracks really stuck out to me, but they were all quite good. The MVPs of the soundtrack are definitely the boss themes though. The over-the-top rock songs make the pivotal moments in the story that much more memorable. Speaking of the story, I was fine with Frontiers from a narrative perspective. The plot of the game wasn't some award-winning masterpiece, but it wasn't corny or too outlandish either. An ancient civilization was invaded by an unknown evil threat, and they were forced to abandon their planet to survive. Simple, but it's effective at giving the Starfall Islands a sense of mystique, as it was cool learning about the history of the place. Frontiers' story is quite a bit more subdued than your typical Sonic game. Usually there's all sorts of crazy stuff happening, right? But here, well, not much really happens. The story is more about learning of the tragedy that befell these islands in the past, which gives Frontiers an almost melancholic feel. I mean, one of the major subplots of the game is giving peace to the Cocos so the dead souls inside of them can pass on. Surprisingly dark for a kid's game. Sonic and Tails even have a conversation where they contemplate the morality of lying to the Cocos so they can feel peace in their deaths. I was legitimately impressed with the subject matter here. It's actually mature, and not in a, hey, look at us, we're rated E10 plus mature. One of the more controversial parts of the narrative was the occasional use of references. At various points throughout the game, characters will toss in nods to past events from other entries in the franchise. Some find it a bit excessive and pandering, but hey, I'm not complaining. They're fun callbacks to all of the amazing adventures we've gone through, both the characters and us the players. I love when a series feels like it has a sense of interconnectivity. It makes the world feel, well, like a world that's actually alive and not a bunch of random filler adventures that may or may not have even happened. Like with the whole Tails relying on Sonic subplot. In Sonic Adventure, Tails' whole arc is about flying high on his own without having to rely on Sonic. Then enforces he's a scared little baby again. At that point, it makes you feel like adventure never even happened, which at least for me hurts my enjoyment of that game's story since I know now it didn't amount to anything at best and potentially never even happened at worst. By Sonic Frontiers referencing Sonic Adventure and using that reference to further improve Tails' character, I can wholeheartedly say that the reference was a great addition. In general, this game did a great job at handling the characters. Amy went from being a clingy stalker to being a chill person trying to spread love and positivity. Knuckles went from being a complete moron to being introspective and lonely, yet willing to open up. And Tails went from being Sonic's damsel in distress to being a more independent person. Sonic is definitely the closest to how he's been portrayed in recent games, although he's a bit more chill this time around. I do kinda wish they did more with his character. He basically acts as each character's therapist and explains to them how to solve their problems. One of the subplots in the game is a digital corruption that infects Sonic every time he saves one of his friends. Eventually, that corruption completely takes over him and his brain just fries like an egg. It's like someone just pressed the shutdown button on him. I don't know, I think this could have been a really cool time to flesh out Sonic a bit. Maybe he's resentful that he's the one that has to save all of his friends and fix their psychological issues. Maybe he's tired that he's the one that has to save the day all the time. Maybe the pressure of constantly having the weight of the world, if not the entire universe, on his shoulders day in and day out has him stressed out. I mean, symbolically, isn't burdening yourself to help those you care about kind of what the corruption represents? I mean, Sonic gets more corrupted every single time he frees one of his friends. Who knows, maybe pull a Persona and have Sonic's friends have to go into Sonic's mind to save him, all the while seeing how he really feels, witnessing the inner machinations of a blue rodent. I mean, Sega does own Atlas. At the very least, it can't be any more anticlimactic than how they actually handle it in the game. Everyone gathers around Sonic and he's just magically saved. It's never explained how it happens or how everyone knows what to do to save him, but he's fixed in about 2 minutes. I was really disappointed by this. It was actually really interesting to wonder where this plotline could go, as this plot point was teased throughout the entire game. It's rare that a Sonic game establishes a feeling of dread, a sense of inevitability and despair. Would that corruption finally overtake him? Would he be able to fight it? Would Sonic actually die? Obviously Sonic wasn't going to die, but it was still exciting to wonder. Even Eggman got more characterization in this game thanks to his relationship with Sage, which I guess I should get into now. I know quite a few people are big fans of the Eggman and Sage plotline, Sage being an AI that Eggman created and eventually they formed a strong father-daughter bond. It's cute, but honestly, it didn't work for me, I'm sorry. The first reason why I wasn't super invested in this subplot is we barely get to see any of their interactions. Off the top of my head, I could only think of a handful of times they were even on screen together, and that's mainly because Eggman is absent from most of this game. Now, in Big's fishing minigame, you can use your tokens or these golden tickets to buy these egg memos. The egg memos are voice logs from Eggman that detail his findings on the Starfall Islands. Usually, I love these kind of things. They expand upon the game's lore without being intrusive or annoying. If you want to find out more about what Eggman did while he was on the Starfall Islands, you can, but you don't have to if you don't want to. My issue with the egg memos is while they aren't necessary to appreciate the game's story, they are fairly necessary to appreciate the Eggman Sage story. Otherwise, you don't really get to hear about how their relationship formed, especially from Eggman's perspective. I think locking a significant part of what is supposed to be one of the most emotional parts of the game behind a fishing minigame is a little whack. The second reason why I don't care for this storyline is I didn't really care much for Sage. She spends most of the game being a jerk to Sonic, which I get considering she's one of Eggman's creations, right? But you can't have someone be a jerk to my character and then expect me to turn around and care about them, especially when she herself has very little personality. She does get better eventually as she comes to appreciate Sonic, but for a majority of Frontiers' runtime, her personality is I like Eggman and I don't like Sonic. To the writers of Frontiers' defense, it is difficult to write an interesting AI or robot character. Because what else are you gonna do besides an unfeeling robot learning to have emotions? My final big issue with this storyline is they don't follow through with it. Sage sacrifices herself at the end of the game to help Sonic defeat the End, a big bad evil moon that just kinda exists, and it caused everything in this game and the entire series apparently. But in an after credit scene, Eggman manages to bring her back to life. I feel like this kind of stomps all over the moment of Sage's death and makes her sacrifice retroactively less impactful. If Eggman had found a way to revive Sage in a later game, I wouldn't have had too much of an issue with her being brought back, but Sage literally dies, the credits roll, and then she's back to being alive again. The whole thing feels cheap. The game's narrative wants to have its cake and eat it too. It wanted to kill off a new and important character, but then bring her back to life so the series can use her in the future. Sonic Frontiers, despite being in production for quite some time, seems unfinished. The rushed conclusion to the corruption subplot, a significant amount of the Eggman Sage plot being locked behind voice logs, the random space shooter final boss fight in a game with multiple supersonic boss fights, the fact that the 4th island is not even a full island, just a story set piece, the fact that the 4th and 5th islands look remarkably similar to the 1st island, the very slim selection of level themes for the cyberspace levels, the small amount of skills in Sonic's skill tree. So many themes seem like there could be more to them. The silver lining here is there are plans for DLC updates in the future. The first 2 updates don't really interest me too much, though I guess some new challenges does seem pretty cool. Obviously, the star of the show is Update 3, which will include new playable characters and some sort of new story content. I would prefer if they fixed the issues that were already present within the story and the gameplay before adding new stuff, but who knows? Maybe this new story will retcon some of the more jarring moments or provide more context. I realize this video has leaned primarily negative, so I want to make this clear. I like this game. I really do. Does it have its issues? Oh yeah, of course. But did I enjoy it? Heck yeah, I did. I have so much hope for this franchise now. Frontiers could easily be the next Unleashed of the franchise, the game that, while it was flawed, had a ton of passion and potential behind it, and drastically shift the direction of the series. And given that it's confirmed the game is getting updates, we could see many of Frontiers' problems that I mentioned in this video getting fixed later down the road. We live in the 21st century, people. Once a game is released, it's not like its journey is over. There's still a ton of new frontiers to explore. Oh, and the pop-in. It sucks, sure, but it isn't enough to ruin the game for me.